All right, folks. Obviously, there is a lot going on in the world this weekend. There was just this huge terror attack in Russia, which I'd love to talk about, but there's really nothing to say. I don't know anything special. I don't know anything more than you do. I don't really have much to say about that other than is what we're hearing right now 100% the full story? I doubt it. So I just want to speculate a little bit before I get into the main meat of today, which will be to do with Israel, and something actually from a couple days ago. This whole situation in Russia seems a bit odd to me. The timing, I think everyone can agree, is suspect. Russia, yes, is still technically at war with ISIS, fighting along with the Syrians against them. But Russia has been an enemy of ISIS for at least a decade at this point. And ISIS is more irrelevant than it ever has been. It is less influential than it ever has been. And so, yeah, it does seem a little odd. Now, does that mean that there was anything more going on than what we've been told? That supposedly, ISIS has plenty of reason to attack Russia. They're definitely not friends of ISIS. ISIS is, as I said, irrelevant these days for the most part, and so maybe this is a good way for them to try and get some attention. And also, considering that the ISIS was once upon a time partnered with the West, with the CIA, perhaps by attacking the CIA's greatest nemesis, the Russians, in the heart of their capital, Moscow. Maybe this is a way of trying to get Senpai to notice you. A lot of people are speculating that the CIA was directly involved here, and that's certainly possible. These guys did seem pretty well trained. I mean, you don't often hear about terrorists going on shooting sprees in Russia. We're told that Russia is a pretty unfree country, that it's pretty authoritarian, and typically in such systems, people aren't really free to organize these sorts of attacks. You would expect them to be stopped ahead of time because the government has so much more control and surveillance over people. At least that's what we're told to believe. But like I said, it's really all speculation at this point. I'll wait to hear at least what the Ruskies have to say about it, since it is their country. They're doing the investigation. The Russians, from what I've seen, aren't coming right out and saying, obviously this is a CIA attack. Might be, might not be. Also, a lot of people want to argue that Ukraine had something to do with this, which Ukraine, CIA, same thing. So it's two sides of the same coin. There are people citing that these guys were not driving, south to try and get back to the Middle East or something, or to one of the stands. They were driving west towards Ukraine. And if that is indeed the case, I wouldn't be shocked. Not sure if that necessarily means that the regime in Kiev was directly involved in this plot. They very well might have been. Because Ukraine has organized a lot of terror attacks inside of Russia. These haven't necessarily been widely reported on. And those terror attacks, really the intel came from the CIA, because Ukraine is not, they don't have a powerful enough, intelligence agency to conduct that sort of espionage. This also is an attack of a different kind than what you typically see, because Ukraine has been perpetrating sabotage attacks against Russia, blowing up, fuel depots, or trying to, sabotage trains or things like that. Stuff that would have a direct impact on the war, not just straight up terrorism like this, although that Ukraine has, attacked some civilian areas, certainly, inside of Russia in their bombings. But again, this is a different sort of situation, going and just shooting up civilians at a shopping mall. And here I said I wasn't going to talk about it because I don't have any information that is unique to me or anything really unique to say. But here we are, over 5 minutes in. And so I'd like to move on to what I actually intended to talk about, and that was Israel. I'm seeing this report going around saying that Netanyahu wants to use the port that Biden promised during the State of the Union address that he was going to build in Gaza. Remember, Biden who said no boots on the ground in Gaza, but the U.S. military is going to build a port in Gaza. Still don't understand how that's supposed to work, but Netanyahu, so says this report, wants to use the port to deport Palestinians from Gaza after it is complete. Now, would that shock me? Do I think that that's something that Netanyahu would like to do? Yeah, it rings true, but does that mean it is true? Did he say that? Well, I decided to check into this a bit more. The original story was from that I saw was from Middle East Eye, and I had to read through the article a couple times. It's very short, so it didn't take much time, but because they have a couple of hyperlinks that don't really go anywhere, so I was a little confused on where the sourcing was for this. It turns out they said it came from a Con News journalist, and I'd never heard of Con News, so I had to look them up. And Con News is Israeli state media. And so I said, wow, really? Israeli state media is saying that Netanyahu wants to use Biden's port in Gaza in order to deport Palestinians, essentially so he can, stage his own rendition of the Mariel boat lifts, sending, Palestinians into, having them wash up on the beaches of South Florida. The dregs of Israel, all the people that Israel doesn't want, the criminals, the rapists, the fraudsters. Netanyahu's just going to empty out his jails once this new port is complete and send them off to Europe and North America. Well, it's not quite that simple. First of all, the original tweet from this woman, who again is Israeli state media, people were in the replies asking her, "What's your source on this?" It's like, well, she's state media. Her source would be the state because she is the state. So she doesn't need a source when she's talking about things that were supposedly said in backdoor government meetings. If state media is reporting this, it means that that's what the state. It's essentially an official statement from the state. Well, anyway, it was written in Hebrew, and I don't speak Hebrew, so I just used the little translate button on Twitter. And what came back was that it was a little strange. First half of the tweet was not to do with this port and deporting people at all, but the second half said something. As far as the state of Israel is concerned, there's nothing stopping Gazans from leaving through this port, except for the lack of countries, willing to accept them. So the way that the English reads, which again, these translator apps don't always work so well, so I'm not sure how it would read in the original Hebrew, but the way the English reads, it's kind of ambiguous whether Netanyahu is talking about people who would want to flee as refugees. And of course, I think that Israel would always consider or would always couch Palestinians leaving and going to the rest of the world as, them fleeing by force or by choice, not that they're forced out. That's what they say about what the Palestinians call the Nakba. The Israelis say, well, we didn't force anyone out. They chose to leave, and so that's why they don't have a so-called right to return. You've heard of the Palestinian right to return. That's what it's talking about. People who were forced out during a time of war because they were fleeing armed conflict, and they didn't want to get involved in the crossfire between, warring factions and armies. They left, and then Israel said, well, this is ours now. This is our country, and you can't come back. And so even if Netanyahu is using this sort of neutral language in the original Hebrew, we still read between the lines a little bit. Are these people, if they were to leave, would the people in Gaza really be leaving by choice, or would they be leaving because they have no homes to go back to? At that point, Do we not call that ethnic cleansing if, if these people are made homeless and then they're told, hey, if you get on this boat, you can go live, in public housing in France or something, when in reality you'll be living in some tent outside of Paris, along with, all the Algerians. And so it's not that much of a leap to say that he's talking about deporting them, but in what I read, the short answer is he didn't actually say that, So it's not factual to say that. You can interpret it that way. That is an interpretation, but it's not a statement of fact to say that based on this report, which again itself is a leak, supposedly, but again from state media, what do you call a leak from state media? That's an official statement as far as I'm concerned. He's saying that this port could be used, and I'm sure Netanyahu would like this, for people to leave. He's not affirmatively saying, okay, once this port is complete, then we can start deporting, getting rid of these Palestinians. He stopped short of saying that. He didn't stop much short, but he did stop short of saying that. So all that is to say that, yes, I do expect that to be something that comes up on the horizon. And the destination, undoubtedly, if Netanyahu gets his way, will be North America and Europe. And so all the people that Netanyahu doesn't want to deal with, that he doesn't want to coexist with, will end up on our shores, in our society. And no matter how much a whole assortment of rabbis want to go, on conservative media and tell me that I'm an anti-Semite for disputing anything that they have to say or denying them anything that they want, I must say that their problems are not my problems. As far as U.S. immigration is concerned, I don't care who's right or who's wrong, whether Israel are the good guys or the Palestinians or the bad guys. Honestly, I don't see in this childish lens of good and evil that the Israelis always want to put things into. I don't think that they are the unabashed good guys, and that the Arabs, all of them, down to not just the men but the women and the children too, that they're all the bad guys, that they're all evil. It's obviously childish. It's obviously a tactic to shut down all criticism, but I don't care in the context of immigration. These people do not belong in Europe. They do not belong in North America. They have a home, or at least they had one until it was destroyed. And if, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Netanyahu, you break it, you buy it. If you want to take over this, this territory, and you want to overthrow Hamas, hey, that's your prerogative. But these are now your citizens, and you have to learn how to deal with them yourself. These are not Egyptians. They're not Jordanians. They're not Lebanese. If you, Mr. Netanyahu, don't want there to be a Palestinian state, well, then the Israeli state is going to have to take responsibility for these people. They're going to have to be integrated into your society, not ours. So with that said, I will see you folks back here in the next one.